First, an exercise: place your hands on the part of your body that you usually complain about the most. Now, say this phrase mentally or out loud: I see you. Thank you for not giving up. I am here now. Remember to subscribe to the channel called Louise Hay English. There are bodies that don't get sick from what happens to them, but from what is kept in silence for years. Bodies that have learned to live with fatigue, pain, and tension, not because they are failing, but because they have received more demands than care. And many times those demands don't come from outside, but from how you talk to yourself. What you say to yourself, even in silence, has a real effect. But when that changes, everything can begin to transform. Your body doesn't need punishments, it needs attention. For years, many have been taught that if something hurts, you fight it. If something isn't working, you correct it. If something gets sick, you cover it up or suppress it. But we are rarely taught to listen to what that pain is trying to communicate. It's no coincidence that certain ailments appear again and again, that symptoms seem to have a cause, that treatments don't achieve lasting results. Behind the physical, there are untold stories, unresolved emotions, beliefs that continue to operate without you noticing. Your body is not broken, it is not your enemy, it is not failing just because it is a messenger, and that message has been waiting to be heard for a long time. Every time your body expresses itself with a symptom, it is not punishing you, it is showing you what your mind perhaps avoided facing. Back pain, chest pressure, constant fatigue, or recurring hormonal or digestive changes without explanation. All of that can be related to what you have been emotionally carrying without realizing it. It's not about ignoring the medical or the physical. It's about adding a deeper perspective, because your body does not forget what you do. Every time you demand of yourself in silence, every time you silence what you feel, every time you treat yourself harshly, it gets registered. Your cells respond to that internal environment, and if there's one thing they need, it's not more rejection, it's understanding. As Louise Hay taught, many times illness is rooted in how we talk to ourselves, in what we believe about ourselves, and in how we treat ourselves day after day without realizing it. That's why, every time a discomfort appears, ask yourself something different. What part of me is asking to be seen? What have I been carrying alone for a long time? What am I demanding of myself that I can no longer sustain? Because the body doesn't ask for medicine, it first asks to be heard, and when it feels accompanied, when it feels safe, it begins to change. Sometimes it's not necessary to understand everything, just to be present in a different way. Imagine that every time you repeat in silence, I can't take it anymore, I'll never heal, my body is useless, you are writing a line of code that your body executes without questioning, because that's what happens. Your cells don't reason. If what you say is truth or exaggeration, they simply obey. That is one of the clearest lessons Louise Hay left. Your body responds to every word you say to yourself. When we talk about mental and physical programming, we're not talking about something mystical. We're talking about biology. What you think generates emotions. Emotions generate chemicals. And those chemicals affect how your nervous system, your immune system, your digestion, and your hormones work. That's why it's not the same to say, I'm exhausted, as it is to say, my body is asking for rest. The first phrase is a sentence. The second is an opportunity for connection. Many symptoms are aggravated not by their original cause, but by the type of relationship we have with them. When you hate the pain, when you're annoyed at having to stop, when you get frustrated because your body isn't what it used to be, what you're doing without realizing it is reinforcing the problem. You're generating an emotional tension that your body interprets as danger, and in danger mode, no healing is possible. A real case clearly demonstrates this. A woman had been living with an autoimmune condition for years, treatments, checkups, diets, all without great progress. Until one day in therapy, she said without thinking, "I feel like my body has failed me." That phrase contained her whole story, her disappointment, her anger, her fatigue, and it was only when she became aware of that she could start to change, not the treatment, but her approach. She began to speak to herself with more understanding, to thank her body for what it was still doing for her, and over time she began to notice changes that hadn't come before. Changing your internal language isn't just a matter of attitude, it's a way of creating new internal conditions so that the body has permission to heal, and that starts with how you talk to yourself today. You don't need to have everything under control to start healing. In fact, one of the most common mistakes is believing that your body must get better first so that you can then love it. But it's just the opposite. Your body needs you to start treating it with care from now on, just as it is, not as a punishment for what it can't do, but as a companion in what it's going through. Many symptoms are intensified not by their original cause, but by the way we react to them. Every time you despair about not feeling well, every time you get frustrated with your body because it's not responding like it used to, you're feeding an internal state that blocks healing. The body goes into defense mode, tenses up and shuts down, because what it perceives is not support, but pressure. But there is a simple truth that can change everything. Your body doesn't need you to fix it. It needs you to be with it, to stop seeing it as a burden, as a mistake, as something that needs to be corrected before it's worthy of care. Sometimes the greatest relief comes not when the pain disappears, but when you allow yourself to stop fighting with it. Louise Hay insisted on this. You are not broken. You are in a process, and you deserve respect in the midst of that process, not just when everything is well. It is very different to say, "I want this pain to go away," than to say, "I am here with you, even though it hurts." The first phrase demands, the second contains, and that difference is not small. It can affect how your nervous system reacts, your digestion, and your hormonal levels. Because your whole body responds to the vibration with which you treat yourself. If you talk to yourself with judgment, the body closes up. If you talk to yourself with compassion, the body relaxes. Real healing is not about pushing for everything to get better now. It's about creating an internal environment where improvement is possible, and that starts by changing the way you are relating to what you feel right now. Have you ever wondered what really happens inside the body when it feels loved? Not from the desire for it to get better, but from a real acceptance without demands. What happens is not always visible, but it is felt, because the body, like any living being, reacts when it stops being on alert. When you speak to it with demands, when you criticize or pressure it, the body enters a state of defense, it tenses up, and that constant tension interrupts essential processes: deep rest, cell regeneration, hormonal balance. It's as if everything inside freezes, waiting for the danger to pass. But when instead of judging it, you embrace it with presence, the body begins to let go. Not because the symptom disappears immediately, but because it no longer feels like it's alone in the middle of the pain. Many believe that healing is about control, but true healing begins when you stop fighting with what you feel and start accompanying it. That's when the body begins to recover what it needs to self-regulate. Louise Hay used to say that you can't heal from struggle, but from love. And this isn't just a nice phrase, it's a vital strategy. There are people who have lived for years with difficult diagnoses, who have tried everything possible and still found no relief. And in many cases, the change didn't start with a new treatment, but with a new internal attitude. Stop demanding and start listening. Stop punishing and start containing. Stop waiting for the body to change to then treat it with care. Take a break. Think about the part of your body that has received most of your complaints, your anger, or your frustration. It could be your back, your stomach, your skin. And instead of asking yourself why it's still the same, try this. Put your hands there and mentally say, "Thank you for not giving up. I am here now." There are no promises, no rush, just presence. And that is often what opens the door to a transformation that doesn't start from the outside, but from within. Healing is not about doing everything perfectly. Healing is deciding not to abandon yourself when you need it most. And that starts with how you talk to yourself in difficult moments, because what you repeat internally when you feel pain, fatigue, or frustration doesn't disappear. It transforms into energy, and that energy is what the body uses to activate or protect itself. Many symptoms persist not because there's no solution, but because the body doesn't feel safe enough to relax. And every time something hurts, your first impulse is to ignore it, get angry, or say, "This always happens to me." What the body receives is rejection, and no one can heal while constantly feeling rejected. Louise Hay taught that the true medicine begins when you speak to yourself like someone who stays, like someone who accompanies. A woman with years of digestive discomfort understood it this way. She had tried everything, but every time the heartburn came back, she despaired, got angry, and experienced it as a punishment. Until one day, instead of doing all that, she simply placed her hands on her abdomen, closed her eyes, and said, "I hear you. I'm not going to leave you alone." And that day, nothing changed on the outside, but something changed inside. She felt calm, not because the symptom went away, but because she was finally with herself, not against herself. That is containment. It's not enduring, it's not resigning yourself, it's holding yourself with love while the body goes through whatever it has to go through. And that act, although not visible, is the beginning of a much deeper healing. Because when the body feels loved, it does what it cannot do under pressure. It begins to trust. Every time you talk to yourself, remember this: you don't need to demand that your body get better to then be able to love it. What your body needs most is for you to choose it now, just as it is. And if you can do that, even a little each day, you are already healing, not from the result, but from the relationship you are building with yourself. Healing doesn't always mean eliminating the symptom. Sometimes healing is about no longer feeling afraid every time it appears. It's about no longer seeing the body as a burden. It's about being able to feel something uncomfortable without reacting with rejection, because something has been repeated a lot. The body only begins to recover when it feels like it is no longer being attacked. Every time you think your body is failing, you are reinforcing an idea that can be more harmful than the symptom itself. Your body is not sabotaging you. It's not being weak. It's doing the best it can with what you have given it. Your thoughts, your emotions, and your way of treating it. Louise Hay insisted on this with great clarity. The body responds to the emotional environment that you yourself create, and if that environment is one of depression, guilt, or hopelessness, it's not a space where anything can flourish. There are real stories that confirm it. People who lived for years with unexplained medical ailments and found relief not with new drugs, but with a different practice, being present without judgment. A woman with recurrent gastritis understood this when her therapist asked her, "What would happen if you stopped treating your stomach as a nuisance and started treating it as a part of you that needs to be heard?" That single question changed her perspective, not because the symptom disappeared instantly, but because she stopped feeling like she was alone facing it. That is what your body needs most. That you don't abandon it. That you don't wait for it to work well to then take care of it. That it doesn't need to be perfect to be worthy of affection. And what is even more important, that you don't have to be at your best to give yourself that same treatment. Today you could choose a simple phrase as a starting point. A phrase that doesn't promise magical solutions, but does promise connection. It could be, "My body doesn't have to heal for me to love it, but it does need my love to begin to heal." Repeat that phrase with presence, not as a slogan but as a way to remind yourself of what is sometimes forgotten. You are not broken, you are not failing, you are in a process, and that process deserves respect, not haste. Sometimes we believe that our body only deserves attention when something is not working. We ignore it in our daily lives and attack it when something hurts. We judge it when it changes, when it gains weight, when it gets sick. Have you ever stopped to think about how you treat it in those moments? Many people speak harshly to themselves in front of the mirror, criticize themselves when they don't perform, get annoyed when they feel pain, and even if they don't say it out loud, that language is present, and the body perceives it. What you say to yourself internally doesn't disappear. It stays, it transforms into a chemical signal, into a vibration that your organs, your tissues, and your immune system interpret as a guide. If the tone you use with yourself is critical or impatient, it's very likely that your body will begin to function under tension. And when that tension accumulates, you don't just feel exhausted, you also begin to get sick. It's not about thinking positively all the time, or about denying what hurts you. It's about noticing what kind of relationship you have with yourself when things are not going well, because that is where your well-being begins to be built or to be broken. Louise Hay said that every thought we repeat is like an order that the cells obey, and that order can be medicine or it can be an added weight. And the most powerful thing is that this is not a distant theory, it's happening every day. There are people who have been living for years with symptoms that don't disappear, with diagnoses that don't improve, with ailments that seem to have no cause. But when they change the way they talk to themselves, when they stop treating their body as a burden and start treating it as an ally, something begins to loosen up inside. It's not magic. It's emotional coherence. It's allowing the body to function in a more gentle environment. Today I invite you to observe that internal dialogue. How do you talk to yourself when your body doesn't respond as you expect? What words do you use when you feel weak or limited? Because those phrases are not lost in the air. They become signals that your body follows to the letter, and that is something you can transform. Your body is a faithful reflection of your emotional state. It not only registers what you eat or what you do, but also what you think, what you silence, and what you decide to believe about yourself. Every part of your body responds to that internal system that goes beyond the physical. It is energy, vibration, chemistry, and memory. And if you understand that, you can also begin to change it. Many pains don't just have a medical cause. There is fatigue that can't be explained by tests. There is persistent inflammation that doesn't go away with medication. There are symptoms that appear and disappear without an apparent pattern. And when everything physical is ruled out, the emotional remains, but in reality it was always there deep down, operating from the background like an unspoken truth. It's not about denying treatments or replacing them with pretty phrases. It's about adding a new dimension, that of awareness, because an affirmation said with presence is not a placebo, it is a signal, an activation of something deeper. Louise Hay taught that the body needs to feel safe to be able to regenerate, and that safety doesn't depend on an external result, but on the internal space you build with your words. You can start with something simple. Choose a part of your body that usually hurts or where you feel the most tension. Put your hand on it and say softly, "I see you, I'm listening to you. Thank you for holding me up." That phrase, if said with real intention, doesn't get lost in the air. The body receives it, and when that is repeated consistently, your energy changes. These kinds of small acts, when done from a place of truth and not obligation, reprogram, because the body doesn't need you to demand that it heal. It needs you to remind it that it is not alone. That's where everything begins, not in the struggle, but in the bond you rebuild with yourself. and that bond can be the door your body has been waiting for. Your body is not an object to be corrected, nor a machine that only works if it's perfect. It is the space where you live, and it deserves for you to inhabit it with respect. For years, many have learned to relate to their body from a place of rejection. When it gains weight, they criticize it. When it gets sick, they curse it. When it ages, they hide it. And even if you don't say it out loud, that energy is transmitted and your body receives it as a signal. Imagine what your day would be like if every part of you knew that it doesn't need to fight to be accepted, that it doesn't need to prove anything to be cared for. That is the foundation of a new form of healing. Stop making self-love conditional on your body behaving as you expect. Louise Hay said it clearly. Your body wants to help you, but it needs you to speak to it in a language that doesn't harm it. And that language is built with intention. It's not about repeating meaningless pretty phrases. It's about choosing words that convey truth, because your cells don't distinguish between a thought said out of habit and one said with presence. What you repeat creates your internal state. And if every day you tell your body, "You're useless, you can't do it anymore, you failed me," you shouldn't be surprised that it acts as if it were true. But if you start using phrases like, "I see you, I appreciate you, I trust you," even if you don't feel an immediate change at first, you are sowing a new form of connection. And that has a real impact, because the body, just like a human relationship, responds when it feels safe, not out of obligation, but because it can finally relax. And it's in that state that what many call a miracle begins, but what is actually biological coherence. Give it a try. Put your hand on the place where you usually feel the most discomfort.
Sorry.
Breathe deeply
please, go ahead.
and say
Take a look.
softly, "I am here with you. I'm not going to abandon you." Don't expect
Today is
anything.
full moon, so I
Just
tried to
stay.
take some picture and
Because
videos.
sometimes what your body needs most is not a solution, but to know that this time you are not running away. Many people have been believing for years that they can only treat their body with love when it is well, that self-respect will come when the symptom disappears, when they lose weight, when everything works as before. But that logic is the very thing that delays the process again and again, because the body cannot heal in an environment where it is only valued if it meets certain conditions. Think of it this way. It would be like telling a plant that you will only water it when it starts to flower, and life doesn't work that way. The body needs care now, even if it hurts, even if it's exhausted, even if you don't fully understand what's wrong with it, because the most powerful message you can give it is not that you expect it to get better, but that you are not going to abandon it, even if it doesn't do so quickly.
Please, go ahead.
Louise
Take a
Hay
look.
insisted on this. The first step toward healing is not a
Today is
treatment
full
or an
moon, so I tried to
affirmation.
take some
It
picture
is a
and videos.
decision. The decision to stay with yourself when you used to push yourself away, to accompany yourself unconditionally. Because every time you react to pain with rejection, even in silence, the body receives a "I don't accept you," and that generates an automatic response of contraction. But when you decide to talk to yourself differently, even if nothing changes on the outside at first, everything changes inside. That vibration begins to reconfigure your emotional state, your energy level, and your biological disposition. The body doesn't need perfection, it needs presence. And every time you treat it with more respect, it responds, sometimes slowly, sometimes subtly, but it always responds. That's why, when a symptom, discomfort, or fatigue appears, instead of saying to yourself this again, try saying, "I'm not alone in this, I am with myself."
Sorry.
It may
No,
seem
please,
small,
please, go ahead.
but it is a
Take a look.
powerful vibrational act, because the body doesn't need you to correct it.
Today
It
is
needs
full
you to
moon, so I tried to
understand
take
it,
some picture
and
and
that
videos.
understanding is what helps it regain its natural balance. Much has been said about affirmations, positive phrases, and reprogramming the mind, but there is a fundamental difference between saying something just to repeat it and saying something from the heart, and your body knows it. It doesn't react to the number of times you repeat a phrase, but to the energy with which you say it. Louise Hay explained this many times. An empty affirmation has no power. A heartfelt affirmation does. This has a physiological basis. When you talk to yourself with kindness, a state of safety is activated within you. Your nervous system changes, cortisol levels decrease, certain hormones are balanced, and oxygenation improves. It's not mysticism, it's biology. What you think generates an internal chemistry. That's why if you start treating yourself with more presence, it's natural for the body to react differently.
Take a
The
look.
most valuable thing about this is that you don't need ideal conditions to start.
Today
You
is
can
full
do it
moon, so I
today
tried
with
to
what
take
you
some picture
have,
and videos.
where you are. You don't need to be in absolute silence or have a perfect posture. You just need intention and honesty. Because if you repeat, I love myself without feeling it deeply, your body doesn't respond. But if you say, I am learning to treat myself better, and you mean it, something within you softens. I propose something concrete for you. Take a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. In one, write down 3 phrases you usually say to yourself when something isn't right with your body. They can be harsh, automatic phrases that you don't even notice anymore. In the other column, write how you could transform those phrases into something kinder without lying to yourself. It's not about disguising the pain, but about giving it a different focus. For example, if you usually say, I'll never get better, you could write, my body is doing its best and I'm going to support it.
Please, go ahead.
Then
Take
choose
a
one
look.
of those new phrases and repeat it with your eyes closed with a hand over your
Today is
heart.
full moon, so I
Do
tried to
this
take
for a
some
few
picture and
minutes a
videos.
day, not because it's a magical ritual, but because you are teaching your body a new way of relating to you. And that, although it may seem small, is the beginning of a much bigger change. You don't need to understand every process in the body to start helping it.
Jeez.
You also don't need to know all the medical or spiritual theory to accompany it better. What is necessary is an internal decision to stop acting as if your body were the problem, because in reality, your body has been the most constant part of your life. It has been there when you felt well, and also when you couldn't take it anymore, and it keeps trying, even when you disconnect from it. Many ailments are not due to an internal failure, but to the exhaustion that is generated when all the internal dialogue is based on demands, comparison, or abandonment. And even if you say it in silence, the body listens. If in the face of fatigue you think the same thing again,
Please,
if
go
in the
ahead.
face of a
Take a look.
symptom the first thing you do is get frustrated or rush to silence it, your body
Today is
doesn't
full
feel
moon, so I
accompanied.
tried to take
It
some
feels
picture and videos.
pressured, and under pressure, the only thing it can do is protect itself. Louise Hay talked about the power of staying, of not emotionally withdrawing when the body needs support most, because in the moments of greatest discomfort is when it needs your presence the most, not for you to solve everything, but for you not to ignore it. When you decide to stay with yourself, when you don't flee from the discomfort but breathe alongside it, the body doesn't interpret it as weakness but as safety. A person who lives with chronic pain said it clearly. The biggest change didn't come when the pain disappeared, but when I stopped thinking that I had to fight against it all the time. That transformation is not immediate, but it is real. And it starts with an attitude. Treat your body like a loved one who needs company, not punishment. You could start today with something very simple. When you feel an ache, don't react with the usual urgency.
Take a look.
Breathe. Place your hands on that area, and in your mind repeat, I'm
Today is
not
full
going to
moon, so I
leave.
tried to take
I
some
am
picture
with
and
you.
videos.
This simple gesture can become one of the most profound tools you have to transform your energy, your health, and your relationship with yourself. There is nothing damaged in you that cannot begin to heal when you decide to stop talking to yourself harshly and begin to do so with care. Your body doesn't need you to pressure it more. It needs to feel that it can count on you. And if you made it this far, you have already taken the most important step, being present. If this message resonated with you, Leave the phrase, "I am with you, body, I will not abandon you," in the comments. Do it as a commitment to yourself. And if you felt that this video helped you see things differently, I invite you to like it, subscribe, and continue exploring this path. Here we don't just heal the body, we learn to treat ourselves with the respect we always deserved.